Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, coming at you live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. I'm the host, Mark Devlin, and I'm coming to you with my co-hosts, Mary Devlin and David Griffiths. How are you both today?
Well, I'm very well, thank you.
I'm jolly well also, thank you very much.
Right, great. It's good to have you both with us tonight. What are you going to be talking about, David?
Well, tonight I will be assessing the likely impact on next year's general election following recent events in Holyrood.
Okay, Mary, what have you got for us?
Well, following today's budget, I will be discussing how the SNP pleaded for no tax cuts and the Greens wanted taxes raised.
Okay, of course, and we'll all be discussing Michael Matheson's ongoing iPad data roaming scandal, as well as the telling the Scottish parliamentarians to get on with their day job.
Yeah.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
Right, all this and much more will be coming your way in just a few seconds.
Brilliant.
Right, so welcome back to the Majority Show. Our aim is a better Scotland without the toxic nationalism that is strangling Scotland's potential. As usual, a huge thanks to our friends at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation, where many of you are watching from tonight. I'm here tonight with co-host Mary Devlin. It's good to have you back, Mary. I noticed there that Karen was saying it's good to have you back. It's good to have you back. Are you feeling better?
I'm feeling much better, thank you. And I really do appreciate all the well wishes that have come in. Thank you very much.
That's very good. Of course, I'm also here tonight with our other co-host, Mystic DG himself, David Griffiths. How has your week been?
How's my week been? In addition to yet more prophecies coming true, or one anyway, it's been good. A usual mix for me, which is trekking around properties. So today I've been dealing with rising damp, a leaky shower, and a cut off water supply. Some poor tenants have had no water for 3 days, which means they can't flush the toilets. So it's all fun, it's not laugh a minute stuff. This anyway. Apart from that, another big day out at the rugby at Mar in Troon at the weekend, which is becoming quite a regular thing. Wonderful,
big event there.
Oh, it's great. Oh, it's terrific. It's really good fun. Anyway, but of course, watching through my fingers, like, oh my God, what next? As Holyrood MSPs preach to everyone on the planet, seemingly, about what must happen immediately, particularly in Gaza. And more, it's reminding me of? It reminds me of the time in the 60s when the Vietnam War was raging and there was a lot of public opposition in the USA. There were marches, there were demos, riots, a lot of support for the anti-war movement among celebrities, which culminated, of course, in Jane Fonda, Hanoi Jane, as they called her, lifting atop an anti-aircraft gun, grinning. I mean, ridiculous. But that's what it's like now. And, of course, North Vietnam was a country with which the US was at war at the time. And this is what it's becoming like. It really reminds me of the same feeling and the same fervour, really. So really worrying times, guys.
Well, yeah, certainly the idea of fervour might not be quite the right word, but intensity. Yeah, well, same thing, I suppose.
Well, that's fervour.
Fervour, intensity surrounding some of these issues is quite intense. We haven't seen, actually, I suppose in some way we're so used to Scottish nationalism, and we felt that has waned. Yes. And the fervour of its adherence has waned over these past year or so. Of course, still get some holdouts, like Japanese soldiers, who've remained in the jungle coming out and saying, yes, we're still going to have a referendum, still get those type of people. But it's kind of gone down, and now we've got this new issue, which we will come on to a little bit later in the show. Okay, a huge thank you also to everyone who donated to our recent crowdfunder to help us improve the sound on the show. We hope that it is improved a little bit. One of the things we also did was improve our internet connection so that it could be more reliable. Who knows? Will it work? We hope so, but there is always going to be some issues somewhere. Please, if you do like the show, sharing is caring. Number one thing you can do right now, like the show. And even if you don't subscribe, you can like it.
Indeedy. But if you can subscribe, guys, please do. It would increase the reach of the show at the click of one button. Boom.
And as usual, I'll be handling all your comments tonight, so please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to get as many up on screen as I can.
Okay, so lots to talk about tonight. We'll be back in just a second. Right, Michael Matheson scandal continues. In any other industry, lying about your expenses is a firing offence. Michael Matheson, data roaming king, is still in his position. So let's have a quick recap of the timeline. On November 16th, in a statement to Parliament, he claimed his wife had informed him of his son. No, this is not right. So something's happened here. Okay, first of all, he made it. Okay, so November the 16th, he made a statement to Parliament, but it turns out that on November the 9th, his wife had informed him of his son's use of the device, which meant basically that he had told the Scottish Parliament a big porcupine. Basically saying that he had run up his £10,935.74 bill solely through conducting parliamentary business, which allowed him to use taxpayer-funded expenses to foot 3,000 of the bill, which was through his expense account, and Holyrood to fund the remaining amount, which I won't say, it's like almost £8,000. Did all this despite having an annual salary of £511. Anyway, he only agreed to pay back his money after the Telegraph revealed that he had actually he'd not been entirely truthful with or put pressure upon him. David, any initial thoughts on the actual timeline and so on?
Well, I think the timeline proved quite clearly that he hasn't been remotely truthful. Some of my notes have just disappeared, so I'm winging it here a little bit. Anyway, so
okay.
you know what's happened here. He's submitted a claim way back in whenever it was January. He's almost had a coronary when he saw the size of the bill, and he thought, my God, what caused that? Then checked it up and was quite happy to claim £8,000 on the basis that, well, of course, it was all totally legitimate. Absolute nonsense. But as we've all seen, he's been caught out because he's said repeatedly, no, it was definitely all parliamentary business. Well, did anybody else use it? Oh, no, certainly not. Nobody else used it. No. But then once it emerged that he had, then he was still trying to pretend that it had been. Once it emerged, I should say, that other people had used it, he was still saying afterwards, no, it was definitely all used for parliamentary business. So he's clearly not told the truth at any stage. So he's been caught out absurdly. So and we'll talk again about what he's what it was used to actually do when he was abroad. But it was clearly he knew exactly what was going on. I don't believe for a second that he didn't, not at any stage.
Let's have a look at what he said. I think maybe yesterday.
Last week, had I been aware that there had been personal use of it by my children at the time, I would have taken a different course of action. But given, as soon as I became aware of that, I took the immediate decision, as we did as a family, to make sure that it was fully reimbursed. So I believe that people can recognise that a genuine mistake has been made. When that mistake is identified, I've taken immediate action in order to address it.
Have you at any point misled anyone about what has gone on here?
No, I've sought to be very clear that my use of that parliamentary device was only for parliamentary purposes when I was using it. What I wasn't aware of is that data was being used by other family members. As soon as I became aware of that, I took action in order to address that. And there are those who've questioned why did I not disclose that information earlier last week, and the reason I didn't do that was because I was genuinely trying to protect my children from getting involved in something that had significant parliamentary, political and media interest, and I wanted to try to prevent them from being drawn into that environment. That's why I then realised later in the week that it wasn't possible to maintain that position, and I set out in my parliamentary statement that the full details of it, including my family's involvement in the matter and how we then sought to address the issue.
Blah, 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 blah. Mary, you had a wee laugh there. What was that about?
I just think he's an absolute weasel. I mean, he must think we're all buttoned up the back. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the expenses claim, I believe, was put in at the beginning of the year, wasn't it? Like
That's
January
right.
or something?
Yes.
So presumably someone would have come back to him and said, well, you're only allowed to claim £200. So can we please ask why you're claiming nearly £11,000?
Right. Yes.
So you think at that point, he might have asked a few questions.
Absolutely right. I mean, I personally, I don't believe a solitary word he said. And if you look at his expression there, now that's the face of guilt, 100%. And every facial gesture and looking out the top of his head like this nonsense, and the attempted forced head nods, which he's obviously been coached significantly on this week. But my view, guys, what I think really happened is he got there and he said that his phone wasn't working. So he phoned up to say, am I okay to use the iPad? He claims. That's what he said he did. And they said, as long as you've got the SIM card in it, fine. Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, you're on the new roaming package, whatever. Of course, he apparently wasn't. He had an old SIM card in there, which he hadn't replaced and should have done. So he thought he was okay using the iPad. But there's another little variable here to add. Unscrupulous people, guys, when they use work equipment and they want to hide their usage to avoid detection, they use data instead of Wi-Fi. It's a very common thing to do. And I think that's what he did. So did he know that the football was on? Of course he did.
Oh, he's stuck there.
We've lost David.
Oh, okay. I'll come back in a second. Perhaps, yes.
Get away with it. That's the truth. What happened?
So, we missed you just for a wee bit there. He knew 100%, in your opinion, that the game
did he know the football was on? 100% he did. Did he know his sons watched it? Absolutely 100%. And did he watch it with them? You bet your life he did. 100% on all three. Now, I might be wrong, but then as I said 2 weeks ago, if the usage this high can only be video streaming, and as I said last week, you do know there were 2 Celtic games on at those days, and what happens the next day? Actually, I was watching Celtic games.
Right, yes.
You don't say. Oh my goodness.
Right. Well, the question here, though, is, okay, so basically misled Parliament. Okay, that's one thing. He told a lie to the Parliament. Presumably, he told the same lie to Humza Yousaf as well. And it stretches credibility that someone in January or whenever it was gets a bill for 11,000 and goes, well, I don't really know what that was for.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I don't really know.
If I came back my holiday and it turned out that we had there was an £11,000, bill for roaming, I would be on the phone to them immediately and I would fight it all the way.
Yes, of course. So, that's the thing. You don't just go, all right, well, don't know what that was for. Just put it through. And also, the person, this is the other part of it, I suppose, is that the person who approves it would also ask the same question. So who approved this? This is the thing. It was under one of the comments. It was under Sturgeon's tenure. So did she approve it? Obviously, an expense, a claim like that that's going to be paid by the Parliament has to go through someone, right?
What about Finance Minister?
Well, it would be Swinney, of course, at that time. Because if it was January, she didn't leave until February the 15th. He stepped down, I think, immediately. Because he said he wasn't going to be her successor. So it's definitely be Swinney, and Sturgeon would have been the chain of command above him. Yeah. Right.
So they knew. You don't get a bill. Nobody gets a bill. It says, "What's this?" Wait a minute. The first thing you do is like, "What's this all about?" Right. Or call the person in, and the person says, "Well, I was on holiday," and they don't go, "Oh well, I don't know how." That's not an acceptable answer. I just don't see how it's possible.
Well, what I think has been going on is that this type of thing is par for the course.
Well, that's a good point.
With the SNP.
Yes.
It probably just, I've put these other things through in expenses, and probably everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people are. So just like, it's 11,000. I'll just put it through anyway.
On Saturday.
Wrong one. Sorry.
Not expecting anything to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Basically, all over the papers is saying that he's a liar everywhere. It's a big issue. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Scottish Tories and their bizarre strategy of trying to put this into a vote of no confidence or so in the next few days. Here we have from the BBC. Matheson faces a no confidence vote over his 11,000 iPad bill. Well, that was from last week. It strikes me as bizarre because basically, have they not learned from what happened before when they've ever done any vote of no confidence? Sturgeon in 2021 had just come out of the Alex Salmond inquiry. She had 2 conflicting reports. They had the Hamilton report, right, which kind of said she didn't mislead Parliament, and she had there was the Parliament's own report, there was the multi-party report, which said she had. So there was some debate about this, and it could have gone on for a long time, but the Tories forced a vote of no confidence, and basically she won that handily because she got the majority of seats, not the majority of people from the country, majority of seats in the Parliament, and she was able to just draw a line under it right there and then.
Yeah.
And that's not the only time they've done that. There's been a whole bunch of other times as well. So, I mean, I think that whoever's advising the Scottish Tories, and we've talked a lot about Scottish Tory policy strategy in the past, is just, this is a very bad idea because it will allow the Humza and Matheson to draw a line under this issue. Now, just imagine if it had been brought a couple of weeks ago. Right, we wouldn't have had, none of this would have come out. We would never have heard anything about the football matches or Celtic or any. Your predictions wouldn't have been able to come true.
Indeed.
Mr. DG. No, they wouldn't at all, right? Yeah. So I don't, it seems bizarre to me. Now, some people in the comments have said to me, but, the vote will show who in the SNP will do the right thing and who has integrity. And, I'm like, well, if you don't know that you have the votes in advance, why on earth would you bring something to the floor that you would lose, right? And then rely on your opposition's good graces to try and win it. It's absolute insanity because every day they're sitting there going, being attacked for not having integrity or not doing the right thing anyway. So why on earth would they suddenly turn around and go, because this Matheson thing, this guy here, well, what we'll do is we'll put a big dent in our party's power and we'll just do exactly what our opponents want. I mean, it's just insanity. I just don't understand it. These people will do anything to remain in power, and which is quite clear from this Matheson thing here. Do you think if Humza hasn't got rid of Matheson now, don't you think he would get everyone to vote to keep him in power, David?
Indeed. Well, you're right. In as much as the vote of no confidence, I've never actually thought will take place. I've said this. I think it will be resolved outside of a vonk. I think what you're seeing here, if the Conservatives have this in them, is essentially a bluff because they don't have the numbers to win. They're not even close. You need several nats to vote either against or to abstain. And let's not forget the numbers at the moment are 72-57. There are 72 SNP Green MSPs and 57 of the others. Take away the presiding officer and you've got 71-57. That means you need 8 Greens or SNP to vote against, or else 15 of them to abstain. That's not going to happen. Neither of those things would happen. So the Scottish Conservatives are almost daring Humza to keep Matheson on, knowing that his continued presence actually damages Humza's credibility. I'm giving the Scottish Conservatives an awful lot of leeway here, thinking that they're actually having this out strategically. They're probably just making a noise, to be honest. But I was speaking to, right in line with what you're saying here, Mark, I was speaking to quite a prominent anti-nationalist guy the weekend. Guy puts a lot of money into various things. Anyway, his view was, look, don't you think it would be better for Michael Matheson to stay in his role rather than to leave?
Oh, not stay in the role, no. Absolutely.
Well, he's saying, wouldn't it be better if he just stayed on? Because that way the bad PR continues like a dripping tap to damage the nationalists, and all the while Humza Yousaf looks like he's both weak and indulgent of his friend who's been caught in the act.
Well, okay. I suppose that's our argument for keeping Humza Yousaf in the role, right, as well. But at a certain point, the action has to be taken, right? And there is a point where that actually, needs to, the hammer has to fall, to use the words of Queen. Right, so it has to do that. Now, what's his name? Matheson said that, where is it here? He said that he could have dealt with the furore better, but insisted he could have not been on. That's the wrong bit. He said actually there's a bit in here. He said questions about how he had racked up the huge bill would have continued even if he had quit, and noted he had referred himself to for investigation to the Scottish Parliament's corporate ruling body, the SPCB, and which of course the Parliament then said, well, it hasn't. There's no mechanism for him actually to refer to us for investigation. But this is the thing. I mean, it's I think the Tories should be milking this for headlines, certainly, and at a certain point, action has to be taken. Now, either way, it's a win-win for them. I suppose you're right. Your donor or whoever it is saying, keep him in place. Because you get generates the bad headlines, or fire him generates the bad headlines. But doing a voting on confidence just throws the issue away.
Absolutely right. So, I mean, my view is either Hamza will act, and he'll say to him, "Look, you're damaging me now. You're going to have to go," because it'll only be on that basis that Hamza would get rid of him if it was shown to be damaging Hamza, which it is. It's just whether Hamza is self-aware enough to realise that, or else certainly the vote of no confidence won't go in. I just don't see it happening. Well, it might, but I don't think so. I mean, remember, there were 2 votes of no confidence in Swinney, and both of them failed, and that was in the space of about a year, the 2 of them. So there's no point. If to have the 4th vote of no confidence, what would that prove, really? But, well...
It seems like an empty threat, really. Yeah. Okay, so I have a question to the viewers. Is it time to put up SackMatheson billboards? We can organise such a campaign, and probably will do. So let's... well, okay, the answer is yes. So keep your eyes open for some new campaigns starting tonight, where we'll be raising some money for billboards to put further pressure on Matheson to resign, whether he resigns or not. It's a win-win, as we said, for us. Okay, so we are going to be back in a few seconds to discuss the Gaza vote and how Anas Sarwar blew up any chance of tactical voting. We will be back in a second.
Just before you do that, Mark, we are getting everyone watching tonight is saying yes, go for it. Yes. Thank you.
Right. Well, that's what I think we'll have to do. Get the word out. The thing that annoys me about this a little bit is like, why are we doing it? Doing it. Should I have it up there in big letters? We have to do it. So it's no right. But anyway, we can make an impact, and you can. So I'll put the thing up later this evening or early tomorrow morning, and we get to our target. We'll need, I think 4,000. It's roughly we'll need to get to put up, and we'll go from there.
On the same subject, Pipsicle is saying abolish Holyrood is trending on Twitter tonight.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. That's another one.
That is good. Well, we did put a poll out about whether we should abolish Holyrood billboards up, and that was also got a very good response. But we should probably just get the SackMatheson one out while we've got the chance. So yes, please do it. Keep an eye out. If you're on our mailing list, please get on it. We send out the weekly email each week, and that will also be on there as well as across the social media. So keep an eye out. Okay, yesterday the Scottish Parliament voted for a Gaza ceasefire. Wow, that must really work. Okay, the opposition parties. It says here the opposition parties. Why? It's not in their remit. Yeah. Why did this happen? Why are they doing this? Why are they wasting time talking about Gaza? Foreign affairs is reserved for good reason, because these extremist run devolved parliaments are not the place for foreign affairs talk, which should be done in a calm and measured manner. Anyway, nonetheless, even though it was a reserved topic, it didn't stop the vote from going ahead. Everyone's so keen to virtue signal that they're good people. Well, in my opinion, letting terrorists off the hook is not being good people. Indeed Richard not. Leonard, for example, the failed ex-leader of the Scottish Labour and Corbyn supporter, posted this big thing here of Hamas unverified casualty numbers. And this is the problem with the whole thing, I think. They're trying to say all these people are dying. The terrorists are giving us these casualty numbers. And so let's just stop fighting. And you're like, what? Wait a minute. Who gave you numbers? Were they verified? All this type of stuff. It's just really very poor. And they're always trying to make themselves look like good people. And then, wow, I noticed, I did a search on Leonard's Twitter, hasn't mentioned the Israeli hostages even once, for example.
Really?
No. And you can do that. You just put in their Twitter handle and hostages and see, comes up. Nothing in most cases, nothing. Even Hamza Yousaf hasn't mentioned Israeli hostages in any tweet in this month anyway. I think late October was the last time he mentioned it, and only maybe once. So it seems very one-sided. Anyway, what case is it for the business? What do you think, David, about this?
Right. Well, I mean, it's got absolutely nothing whatever to do with the Scottish Parliament, if you want to call it that. Nothing. Couldn't have less to do with them. But Holyrood has elected to speak out on this issue. Okay, but why this issue exactly? What about the fact that Pakistan is in the process of expelling 1.75 million Afghans? How many times has Hamza Yusuf spoken out in condemnation of that move? How about the Iraqi Yazidi hostages who are still held in captivity by Hamas in Gaza? Any plans to table a motion calling for their immediate release, Hamza baby? I don't think so somehow. So what we're seeing here, in truth, is the Scottish Government following a personal agenda, and all of these so-called progressive parties, Labour and Lib Dems, falling over themselves to join in, to say, yeah, we'll vote for that too. And they're acting effectively on whatever issue is close to the Scottish Government First Minister on a purely personal level. And that's not how you run a legislature, guys.
No.
Of course, you've got all these Greens who can't say enough about the iniquity of Israel, and I'll talk a little bit about one of them later and what she said. I know you will also, Mark. We're just seeing student politics taken to the most absurd degree. It really is ridiculous, because these people haven't got the any kind of gravitas to talk about this stuff with the benefit of any world experience. They're just a bunch of effectively dysfunctional children yapping and saying, this is what I think. Well, nobody cares what you think, frankly, so just stop, please.
It's playground politics, isn't it? I mean, that's the level of it.
Well, it's just very you're trying to expect someone like Ross Greer, who wasn't even born even when 9/11 happened, for example, or to have any idea. I mean, he was born, but basically, wasn't
Probably
mature
wasn't talking
at that time, and people who've followed these issues for many, many years and really have cut through the bullshit and the propaganda and all that and see what's actually going on here.
Yeah.
Not even that, you get the thing right in your face. But let's just get back to the basic thing. They shouldn't be the opposition shouldn't be indulging this, because indulging the nationalist fantasy that the Scottish Parliament is a platform for foreign affairs and that Scotland should have a separate say in these issues from the UK Parliament. They should stop helping nationalists doing this. Why would you do that? You just say, the Tories should have said, we're not going to participate in this vote at all. And put a thing into the presiding officer to say, this is outside the remit of this Parliament. This is not what we're here for. We're here to look after empty the bins, I always say. Emptying the bins, right? So, that's the thing. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about Anas Sarwar. Now, Keir Starmer, during all this conflict, has managed, despite difficult circumstances in his own party, many frontbenchers, backbenchers resigning and so on, he's managed to maintain a consistent position against a ceasefire in Gaza.
Yeah.
But his compatriots in the Scottish Labour Party don't seem to be following that at all. And that leads to quite a few questions. Yesterday, Anas Sarwar, who is the head of Scottish Labour, made a very serious appeal before the vote and then voted for it. And this has appalled many people who would otherwise have supported him, even if it was temporarily for tactical voting. So, in my opinion, as I said earlier, just there, why are they indulging this nationalist fantasy that we can do foreign affairs here? He could. I just don't understand the politics of it, really, because all they needed to do is keep his mouth shut. Yep. Like most politicians, he could maybe have just talked rubbish and nobody would have cared, and then abstained. But instead, he went against his own party leadership, voted in a reserved issue, voted with the SNP, supported Hamas's goals for a ceasefire based on unverified child casualty numbers, threw Scottish Jews under the bus, destroyed tactical voting all in one vote. Well, this is, you mentioned this, David, this is the thing, it's like a personal issue. Is this feeling strongly about a personal issue so worth it that you would destroy your own credibility and your own standing with so many people?
Well, they're taking an almighty risk here, Scottish Labour. I'll come on to talk about it shortly. But I have my views about why this is happening. We'll talk about this when we talk about Starmer shortly, I think it is. But what's happening here is you're seeing the Scottish Labour Party trying desperately to, if you like, differentiate themselves from UK Labour because they fear two things, really. Sarwar fears two things. One is being labelled a red Tory by the SNP, and the other is being labelled a branch office of the UK Labour Party. And that, I think, is why he does a lot of what he does. So yeah, I think that is behind. I'll talk further about this later.
Sure. But I think, I think for many people, and I think people are thinking it's hard to escape the conclusion that both the First Minister and the leader of Scottish Labour, who are both Muslims, are putting their religious priorities higher than the priorities of the people of Scotland. It's just, and someone said, called me racist for saying Islam isn't a race.
No,
it's like this is a political talk we're talking about, and this is the combination of religion and politics, and we try to get rid of that in the UK, and now it seems to be coming back a bit here, and it's causing all these unwanted effects. We wanted to believe that that Labour could possibly be a place to put your votes in, because the question here is if Anna Sarwar can turn against and do whatever he likes here, what's to stop him turning and working with the SNP on a second referendum? There's nothing to stop that, right? In the meanwhile, you've got the MPs in Labour, and you've got Starmer trying to say, we're actually electable, and you've got these idiots down in the bottom saying, just no, we're not inelectable in the slightest, and actually, we're anti-Semites, and we're putting our personal politics and our religion and all this above everything else. Well, wait a minute. Well, you're just blowing. If you're blowing with the wind like that, then how can we trust you? I mean, you're trying to trust these people. I think so. So for me, I can't. After this, I cannot tactically vote for Labour in this case. I mean, I've people who've watched the show will know that we've been very positive on trying to do that.
Sure.
And I can't. And we'll come on to the tactical voting in a bit more. But what is Labour's? Why did Keir Starmer let this happen, David? Why do you think?
Well, I think what they're doing here between them, Starmer, I think, has his view that he's trying to make himself electable in the key areas of particularly, let's say, the East Midlands of England, the southeast of England, and the north of England. That's where he has to make his big gains, really. Those are the key places for him. Now, he's going to do whatever it takes there. We know that England is fundamentally a small C conservative country, really. They have mainly they have non-extremist views. Scotland's a little bit different. Scotland likes to think of itself, the Scottish electorate likes to think of itself as being a little bit rebellious and a little bit socialist and all the rest of it. So he's trying to tread this line. He is also trying to give Sarwar some, if you like, head, as they used to call it, which is like give him the ability to go and act under his own volition. And that's fine up to a point, but he's got to, Sarwar that is, has got to stay within the teachings, or if you like, the policies of his UK party, because otherwise what's he standing for? He's not a separate party, he's part of the Labour Party. Why is Starmer allowing this? Because of the reasons I suggested earlier, that he's having to tread a fine line here between giving Sarwar enough rope, if you like, to carry on and do his own thing, and at the same time stay.
I know, but it doesn't make much sense to me. What's the point of giving, Sarwar or Scottish Labour enough rope to hang themselves, to hang the whole party? The UK Labour needs to win in Scotland.
Yes, it does. It's never won. It's never won an election this century or last century. Well, it's never won an election this century. It never. Oh, no, that has two. Sorry, it never won an election ever without winning a majority of seats in Scotland. If they think they can do that without winning in Scotland, they haven't got history on their side there. So how's that going to happen? Wow. I really think that this is part of the strategy of the I think that the two of them, between them, think, okay, what do we have to do here? Well, we've got to look a little bit rebellious, but not too rebellious. So eventually he gets reined in, though. I mean, Starmer did that with the GRR. Because Sarwar...
Yeah, but it's true. I think it's a bit late now. I think he shouldn't have been allowed. He could have abstained. Well, and been fine.
You're right. He could have abstained both votes.
And I think this whole idea of the branch office thing is a pernicious idea. It shouldn't actually happen. There really shouldn't be a separate Scottish Labour Party or a separate Conservative Party, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It should just be, we are the Labour Party and this is what we do. And because basically the idea of setting up a separate thing that covers the whole of Scotland, it's a nationalist idea. Yeah. Right? And it basically embeds division. Right, in the core of it, you got a fly or something.
Something flying about my head.
A spider.
You stop it. Go away. Leave me alone. I think it's a nationalist fly. Yeah.
I mean, it does just embeds division. So we're constantly seeing this. It's so easy to attack the national school. Yeah, just a branch office.
Yes.
And then you're like, well, we're not actually. We're one. We should be one. and then so what
Why
they actually
do
do is
even get upset at that though?
I know it's bizarre, but they do, and also remember that the Labour Party is still damaged. It's still traumatised by the 2015 general election when they won one seat out of 59 and the SNP won 56, and that was 2 years after the independence referendum. It was 1 year after the independence referendum, I should say, not even a year. And the accusation was that they were red Tories and that they'd stood on the same platform, the Better Together platform as Conservative Party, and they are haunted by that, guys, is my reading of it. So
yeah, I don't think it makes it. It's just, it means that they do these bizarre actions. You've got in the Scottish Conservatives case, you had Douglas Ross first in the line, stab Boris in the front, and so on. It's just bizarre. It's like no, that's one. You'll have to get away from that, I think.
Here's an interesting point, because Ian Hamilton says, to be fair, Welsh Labour and Can, the London mayor, have also done the opposite to Starmer as well. But that's get your points. So maybe Starmer just doesn't have control of the party.
Well, it's either that or he's saying to them, look, you can say what you like here, but don't embarrass me or whatever. It's hard to say. I mean, I've reached out to guys in the Labour Party to say to them, just trying to understand the strategy here. You don't want to discuss it with me. I mean, I'm trying to help.
I mean, it just. I mean, I think I've had masses of people saying, "Why? I wouldn't vote. Tactically vote." We'll come on to that in a second. I think it's an infuriating waste of political capital on an issue outside his remit.
Yeah.
Next up, Mary's going to talk about Grangemouth. Now, it looks like we're going to be a little bit. The show is going to run a little bit long, so we are welcome to have you with us. If you do like the show, please do support us with a donation. We have on YouTube, you can do a super sticker, super thanks, which should come through the chat. And if we see it, we'll give you a shout out. Otherwise, please go to our website to donate. As I mentioned earlier, though you may as well just donate for this billboard campaign that we're going to come up with. Of course, you can also get T-shirts and so on as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Mary, you're going to talk about the Grangemouth closure now.
Okay, I'll try to do it pretty quickly.
No, it's fine. Just take time. We'll see how we go. All right, back in a second.
Well, there's been terrible news this afternoon that Scotland's only oil refinery at Grangemouth is to close with the loss of up to 500 jobs. Now, Grangemouth supplies 80% of the country's fuel. The refinery in Falkirk is responsible for 4% of Scotland's GDP and approximately 8% of its manufacturing base.
Wow.
So we're talking about a 12th of Scotland's manufacturing base is about to close. We're expected to cease operations in about 18 months in spring of 2025. The owners, Patronios, a joint venture between PetroChina and Ineos, said the site would become an import and distribution hub, which is rubbish. First Minister Humza Yousaf said the scale of job losses would be quite significant. The refining capacity there is 150,000 barrels a day. It plays a leading role in supplying Scotland's fuel demand and its strategic importance to Scotland's energy supply and regional economic development. This is a disaster, guys.
Yes, it really is.
I mean, I don't see how something's been done.
No. I mean,
to try and save this.
Yeah, those figures are terrifying.
It's
I mean, we always make the joke that Scotland doesn't make anything except caramel wafers and shortbread and maybe whiskey. But those figures are really startling. But I mean, in all honesty, I tweeted this today. Who could blame an oil company for wanting to pull out of Scotland when they see the Scottish government figures desperately trying to close down the nation's oil industry, saying no more oil exploration?
Yes.
Right, sure. Okay, great. In that case, well, don't expect us to hang about then. When particularly against the economic uncertainty backdrop as well. So absolute madness, but completely predictable. And this is what you'll see more and more under the SNP and the Greens. And I imagine the Greens are absolutely delighted at the closure of this refinery.
Yes, I mean, that's just a spoiler alert, but that's going to be one part of the Zimmer. But I think there's a long history in here of Scottish government antagonism to the oil and gas industry. I mean, we even talk about Ineos in particular and their attempts to get a big fight with the Scottish government over fracking, wanted to do a test fracking well, whatever it was, and they went to court to say that the Scottish government had imposed an unlawful ban, and they lost that, even though there was kind of the Scottish government had never actually said outright there was a ban, but they had instructed local authorities to stop planning, very similar to what they say they will do with nuclear, any proposed new nuclear power plants. And also the owner, Jim Ratcliffe, richest man in Britain, who we could be doing with more investment in Scotland, decided not to build his Land Rover replacement here. Went to France instead. And but actually, when I was doing the research for this, I saw that they had threatened to close the plant in 2013, and the Scottish government had said, under Swinney, had said that they're looking for a buyer. Now, can you imagine that? Imagine him with all the disaster in the ferries and all that. I mean, we'd all exploded by now. Just a complete disaster. I mean, you can't expect to treat business so poorly, oil and gas business or any business, and get it and retain investment. It's just hopeless. Mary, any final set words on that?
No, but I mean, as I report on here every single week, it's that the SNP and the Greens, they have absolutely no business sense whatsoever. They've made Scotland into a hostile environment for business, and this is what happens. And they probably don't even know in their tiny little minds what the consequences of this are going to be. But we will soon find out when that happens in 2025. It's going to be very tough. We're going to lose a 12th of our manufacturing base in one fell swoop.
Right. Yes, it's a pretty shocking story. Just when you think things can't get any worse, they do as usual. Okay, right. We will be back in a second. Dave's going to talk about what are those things called? It's called tactical voting.
Should we still do it? Is the question? Yes.
Okay. So back in a second. Right, David, come on, give us your best.
I will indeed. Okay, so tonight, this is a subject I've touched on many times, guys, as we all know. Tactical voting, particularly tactical pro-UK voting in next year's general election. Now, Mark, you've said, listen, you can't really endorse Labour tactically.
I think is the word.
We were all with you, David. We were all going along with the, for the common good and everything. But I'm sorry, we've lost the will.
Listen, there are an awful lot of people who've said very similar things. Okay, so I'm just going to take it back a little bit and give you my slant on it and make my recommendation, if you like. Okay, so I think we should still go ahead with tactical voting, and I'll explain why. Again, talking on a personal level, I became involved in Scottish politics just over 3 years ago when George Galloway decided he was going to do this thing with All for Unity. And I was living, as you know, guys, in the northwest of England. I decided I couldn't possibly sit back and watch as Scottish nationalism and the forces of Scottish nationalism tried their best to break up the country, that is the UK. And so every action I've taken since then has been aimed at precisely that, which is stopping nationalism by reducing the number of pro-independence MPs and MSPs, and maximising, in Scotland at least, the number of pro-UK representatives. And that's exactly what I said for All for Unity, because they had a proven mechanism which Alex Salmond then ripped off to get more pro-UK voters, in our case, elected via the list. The Scottish electorate, of course, took fright and said, no, we can't do that. We're going to go for Conservative, Labour and Lib Dem, bizarrely. And now everyone's saying, we can't possibly vote for Labour and Lib Dem. Right. So your options are being drastically reduced, because we've all kind of said, we've all agreed over the last year and a half, look, there's no point in another new party. Now we're saying we can't vote Labour. Presumably that extends to the Lib Dems, because they voted for the ceasefire also. So you really don't have
going to win any seats. I suppose they can win some seats.
Well, they do. Well, the thing is, at the moment, the Lib Dems certainly have double the number of seats in Scotland and in Westminster that the Labour Party does. So, they've won 4. They're probably good to win another, that same 4 next year. Anyway, the main reason, let's not forget, the main reason a lot of people decided not to vote for All for Unity was the presence of Galloway, because he's a divisive figure. Some of his worldviews are very, very extreme. Some of his views on, for example, Northern Ireland don't resonate at all well with the pro-UK vote, or the majority of the pro-UK vote in Scotland. So that was kicked out. And they were a proven method of getting more seats was effectively rejected. Now we're on the precipice of making effectively the same mistake now, is my view. Anas Sarwar, as I've said, is following a strategy of Firstly, he's anti-Tory. That's what he will speak out against the Conservatives far more often than he'll speak out against the SNP.
That's fair enough. The Golden Bridge that we talked about.
Exactly that. He's given the Golden Bridge to SNP voters, who, let's not forget, are only Labour voters who've jumped the dike anyway.
Yes.
And he's asking them to come back again. What he won't do is be seen to be in any way pro-Tory. That's why he wants to be, if you like, progressive. That's how he wants the SNP to be viewed. He will attack the SNP in terms of their record of particularly health, and he's made a lot of he's got a lot of traction doing that, so fair play to him. He's also trying to counter the accusations at the branch office, as I've said. Now, in pursuance of that strategy, he has made and will continue to make, I think, in the next few months, decisions that will baffle some voters, like voting for the GRR, whipping his MSPs to do it. And he also, some people lost their jobs with Labour for not backing the gender recognition reform bill. But does that mean we should abandon the price? No, not for me. Let's look at the numbers again. I've been through these, and I'll go through them at whatever length people want. There are 57 seats in Scotland next year. In the tactical voting guide, I've looked at it, and I've looked at every seat that can be won by any party. The Liberal Democrats can only realistically win 4 to maybe 7, if you include some of the seats in the Western Isles. It's hard to guess exactly where the SNP vote will go after some of those seats get lost and spread. They could win maybe 7 at the moment. Conservatives, they've got 6. They might keep 6. They might lose 1. They might win 1. The maximum number of seats the Conservatives could get, even with the most fair of fair wins behind them, is 12. They couldn't get any more than that. And that leaves 38 out of 57, exactly 2/3 of the seats in Scotland where only Labour can beat the SNP. Now, what that means is, not only can Labour not really win a general election without taking Scotland, I don't care if Labour wins a general election, I really don't, but it would be better for our purposes if Labour won the most number of seats in Scotland and Labour won the general election, because that at a stroke would do 2 things. It would disprove this complete false theory that votes in Scotland don't matter, and it would disprove the other theory going on for that Scotland never gets the government it votes for. Scotland can't get the government it votes for right now because voters effectively abstain by voting SNP. But what it would also do is it would show that Scotland still has a role to play in electing who the government of the day is. Now, what it would, and the most, if you like, valuable prize is, it would stop the SNP in its tracks, because let's not forget, they've said, well, of course, if we get the most seats next year, particularly a majority of the seats in Scotland, then we'll open negotiations straight away.
No, that's nonsense.
Exactly, it's nonsense. But as you've said, who knows what the Labour Party is going to do? So we can't keep voting Conservative in Scotland and hoping for the best and thinking, oh,
but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think people are just going to stay at home.
Yeah.
It's like, right?
Exactly.
I think people are giving up at this point.
I mean, people are saying
there's no one to vote for.
There's no one to vote for. If there was a party on there that said, none of the above, the none of the above party, it would get all the votes.
Yeah, I think we've gone through the stage of, it's not just a case of, what you're supposed to do is vote for the party that you think is the best. I think we've even gone through that. I moved from that to the vote for the party you think is the least worst. I think we've gone below that now. I think there isn't even a party that you could go, that you would get your coat on and go out the door and say, well, I voted for them because there's nothing.
And I think to some extent, though, David, what you're saying does make a lot of sense. In one of the comments, it says, do we want to punish Labour or do we want to beat the SNP? Our job is to beat the SNP. Exactly. But Labour isn't making it any easier for us. There was no need. You could have said a lot of words, as I said, that were that would have been made that SNP friendly voters come back without actually taking the vote. There's no need to do that, and it's just I think it's very troublesome. So I think this will unfold over the next few weeks. I think we are disillusioned,
yes, I can
to some extent, with the idea and why bother, right? But in the end, maybe you have to say, all right, okay, what is the best solution for us? The complete destruction of the SNP. Oh, that's quite appealing, but exactly. At the same time, empowering Anna Sarwar and that type of thing.
I know. It's a very difficult one, and I have every respect and every sympathy for people who think, why would I vote for these people? I totally get that.
Well, actually, now, of course, the other point as well is that once we do get rid of the SNP, then we can vote for whoever we like.
Well, there is that, exactly. Well, so I just think, there's no point pushing it now until we know firstly, who all the candidates are, and secondly, what the date of the election is, thirdly, what the policies are. That's when you make your decision. All I'm saying at the moment is, and this is the only reason I do this, is to say, if you want to beat the SNP, these are the parties best placed to do it as things stand. That may all change, but who knows what's going to happen in the next few months? You don't know whether there's going to be a massive shift in momentum backing Labour. There could be a shift back to the Conservatives. I cannot see any set of circumstances through which the Conservatives would win a fifth term. I just don't see it. They're going to try the tax cuts. They're going to try the national insurance cuts, the inheritance tax cuts. I know that, but
nobody cares about that.
Nobody cares about that, exactly.
And
the inflation rate is falling so far. Exactly, the inflation rate's falling so far. Half the people will be delighted that interest rates are high because they're getting more money from savings for a start. So, it's not in its own, in and of itself, you can't just use the economic indicators and say, yes, we're going to win the election because of that. So we don't know. But all I would say is, please don't give up on it yet. I'm really, on a personal level, I've reached out to, I think it's 3 senior Labour figures to say, look, can we talk? Please, can we talk? Because if the Labour Party, and if anyone's listening from the Labour Party is listening here tonight, please hear this. You cannot win an election in Scotland or in the UK just by doing your own thing if you're going to have an office here and an office there completely at loggerheads with each other, because everybody in the UK stopped voting Labour when Labour started looking both ways on key issues, like Brexit for one. Remember the laughable policy they had in the last election? No wonder they lost. And if they do the same thing with Gaza, for example, you're just going to get yourself into the same as just as they've done with the gender recognition reform bill. You cannot have two branches effectively, or two.
Yeah, branches. Can't do that. It's no good. It's no good for anything. It's no good. I think, as I said, we should get rid of. I think we should get rid of these branch office things.
I hear that indeed.
Right. Okay. Very good, Mary. We're going to go to you next. Mary's going to tell us all about the Scottish finance sector. All about the budget and the Scottish response to that. Back in just a second. We are going to run probably 10 minutes over, so we're delighted to have you with us. It's not great weather outside. Anyway,
there's just so much to talk about.
Yes, there's a lot going on. There really is a lot going on this week. So, Mary, good.
Okay, so this afternoon, the UK Chancellor Jeremy Hunt announced his autumn budget. Significantly, by reducing headline rates of national insurance for employees and the self-employed, it's estimated that 28 million people will now see their tax lowered. Yay! And it was good news for lower paid workers, as the government confirmed the new minimum wage rise at £11.44 from April. People on benefits and pensioners will also see significant raises. The rates of income tax remain unchanged. So everyone is happy. Would have been nice to get a cut to income tax too, but that would have made Shona Robison, our Scottish Finance Secretary, and the SNP and the Greens very unhappy, because earlier this week, Shona Robison wrote to Jeremy Hunt asking him not to cut taxes. The Scottish Greens wanted to raise taxes. They say if the UK matched Scottish income tax rates, which is an extra 2% or something higher, it would raise £11 billion for frontline services.
I saw that actually. Yes, I did actually see that headline. I'm like, what? What?
I know, it's ridiculous. I mean, but these are the people who are always going on. On the one hand, they're saying, we've got cost of living crisis and we have to help lower income people. And then when it actually comes down to it, it's the Tories who are cutting taxes and the SNP and the Greens who are saying, no, don't do it.
Yeah, well, they've already raised their taxes plenty with all the green subsidies and nonsense, or windmills and what have you, and their energy bills, right? So more do they want?
Well, I mean, they want to raise taxes, so it makes them look really bad if Jeremy Hunt is coming along and saying, no, we can actually, cut some of the taxes. So what do you think about the Finance Secretary saying not to cut taxes in Scotland?
I mean, it's breathtakingly, embarrassingly stupid. How can you keep saying that? They keep claiming that the SNP keep claiming that Scotland is pays the lowest tax in the and yes, it does in terms of, I think we pay 75p less per week. Up to a certain minuscule level, above which Scottish workers pay far more, and I think that threshold is something like
it's between 12,500 and 14,500 or
that's it, exactly that. And above that,
less.
Exactly. And if you earn 24,000, you pay significantly more in this country. We did a table about 2 years ago, and guys earning 55,000 pay like something like
£2,000 more a year. Yeah.
How are you going to attract any doctors and stuff like that?
Well, they're all leaving. All the doctors are leaving Scotland.
It's true. I mean, not only are wages higher down in England, but certainly taxes lower too. So people are led by this, particularly young people. I mean, what else? Or people with families. So it's just beyond ludicrous. I mean, how they can think this is the right way to I have no idea. It's just so short-sighted. It's absurd.
Now, this is the one here. Sorry, this is the one you had here. This income would raise 11 billion for frontline services, and everyone will leave the country.
Yeah,
that's the bit that's missing there. It's just this idea. It's also kind of Scottish exceptionalism. Our taxes are better than your taxes. It's our taxes. Don't take them away from us. And we've got this incredible, as we talked about, disparity here that's basically leading people to leave Scotland. We have a brain drain as anyway. Just naturally, if people want to leave Scotland, they graduate or whatever it is, and they go, well, we can't make any money here. All right, so we'll go somewhere else. And it's been going on for years. It happened to us. We did it ourselves. And not that many come back. It's just a big loss. It's like, okay, I always thought this, when this tax raising power thing,
big mistake.
That was a big mistake. Why on earth did they do that? And it was always like only up. You can go 1% higher, but not 1% lower or whatever it is. And then you're like,
well, if Jeremy Hunt today had lowered the income tax rates, then that would have made more of a disparity with Scotland. And if Scotland, hadn't lowered, if they'd lowered income tax by 2% and Scotland hadn't lowered income tax rates in Scotland, there would be a 4% difference. So that's what they were protesting about so much.
Right.
They don't want it to, to get even more. It makes them look so bad. Right. But at the same time as Shona Robinson was asking for additional was asking not to cut taxes, she was asking for additional funding for public services. She says she's been forced to make exceptionally difficult decisions because Scottish Government has had to make £680 million in. And she's blaming, of course, what is she blaming? She's blaming the prolonged Westminster austerity for the situation. Now, bear in mind, the Scottish Government has just spent around £800 million more than had been budgeted for on pay deals for public sector workers for this year.
Yeah, quite. This is why there were no strikes in the health service because they bought them off.
That's what's causing the £680 million pounds in
and
cuts.
The ferries and the Guptas and all the other.
Well, I mean, the SNP and the Greens are just wasting money hand over fist.
Indeed.
And they're screwing councils.
Yes, exactly. It's a shocking situation, Mary, and they want to make it worse. Let's try and stop them. That's all we can say about that. Next, also, thank you for being with us tonight as we go through the horror show of Scottish politics. If you can, please subscribe to the show. Leave comments on YouTube. Of course, the number one thing is to get a like from you if you like us for whatever reason, even if you just like our faces. Then please just hit that button. And of course,
I don't think we'll get a lot of money for our faces, to be honest.
It's a desperate attempt, Mary. It's just a desperate attempt. Yeah.
If we're relying on that, then we're screwed, guys.
Right, you mind? Okay, all right, and or you can subscribe on YouTube, and you could buy a T-shirt or a mug. T-shirt. Look at this amazing thing here.
Sorry, Mark.
That's right.
Comment right over it.
Impress your friends and make your enemies lament. Cry into their teacup when they see abolish holiday. What do you mean? It's been so great these past 25 years.
Baby boxes.
Yeah, baby boxes. But cardboard is not really it's not really an achievement.
It's like the three little pigs, and we made ours with cardboard.
Okay. Right, getting back on track. It's a moment you have all been waiting for. It is Zoomer of the Week. Yes, gorgeous.
Hooray.
Mary, you bring the glamour.
Thank you for that, Stuart. I'll give you the money later.
That's it, yes. Okay, all right. So Zoomer, my Zoomer for sheer hypocrisy is the Scottish Greens and what's her name again? Gillian McKay.
Yeah.
Don't know which one you put on the caption there, Mary.
I put Gillian McKay's.
Right, today we've seen masses of Scottish Greens complaining about Grangemouth being closed down. Here's this tweet here. Right, okay, and basically says, workers in Grangemouth have been betrayed by oil and gas giants who operate the site. Workers were promised a just transition, but instead have now been told their jobs at risk and these companies cut and run to turn a profit. Well, companies are supposed to make a profit. But aside from that, whining about a just transition, workers weren't promised anything at all, not a just transition. Their idea of a just transition was just stop oil. So is it any surprise that those who produce oil won't do it anymore there? There's no such thing as a just transition or a new Green Deal where workers are concerned.
Correct.
Idea is to stop you working on those projects. Not just 400 jobs lost, also hundreds of private contractors that maintain the plant in the town of Grangemouth, which, as one of our commenters mentioned, would turn it into a ghost town. I haven't been to Grangemouth, don't know if it already is a ghost town or not, no offence to people of Grangemouth. Ultimately, Greenism is an anti-human movement that prioritises the religious belief in the climate over the lives of ordinary humans.
Yes.
And, you know, these, for example, we had this, I've lost my tweet, but Gillian McKay in a tweet in 2016 said she'd rather have a wind farm than a refinery on her doorstep. Other than the fact that she doesn't like it, if she doesn't like it, she can move. She'll soon be getting her wish. She says, I grew up less than 200 yards from the plant, and I can tell you that workers at the plant are bewildered, betrayed, and furious at finding out about this on the internet long after shareholders were made aware. And she's called for an urgent summit. That's like the bull that wrecked the china shop sitting down and asking for a cup of tea. She never cared about the workers, and they never did. So we've ended up with net zero jobs from the anti-growth Greens. And who've captured Scotland's energy policy. And then they look around and say, oh, how could this happen to us? We're good people. Utter hypocrites.
Exactly.
That's what they are. Utter hypocrites.
Dreadful.
And
we are starting to reap what they have sown.
Yes,
that's
indeed.
it.
Well said.
Just reap the wind, sow the whirlwind.
Indeed.
As it were. Right, okay, next up it is going to be David.
Okay. Continuing the Scottish Green theme, my Zoomer of the Week nomination is no stranger to this segment. I know that is Maggie.
We've lost you, David.
Oh, hello, I'm here. Hello.
Right, no, you're back.
Right. Start again.
Sorry. Anyway. Right, so continuing the Scottish Green theme, my Zoomer of the Week, no stranger to this segment, I know, is Maggie Chapman of the Scottish Greens. Now, Maggie has spent days tweeting about Trans Awareness Week, just in case anyone has been in a cave for the last year and is unaware of the trans debate that the Scottish Greens have been desperate to keep front and centre of discussion of every political item in Scotland for what seems like, God, decades. Anyway, so that's what she's been spending her time on this week. And, of course, she's tweeted at length about Gaza and she's shrieked repeatedly that an immediate ceasefire must take place. Now, in among a sea of really dreadful, low-quality tweets from Chapman, she outdid herself with this one when she said, Israel is a settler colonial apartheid state. Now, some might say that Maggie Chapman would know all about settler colonial apartheid states, given that she was born and raised in what was then Rhodesia, formerly, which is now, of course, Zimbabwe, having moved there with her family from South Africa. So takes one to know one, I guess, Maggie baby. So leaving aside, how's that for chutzpah, as they say? But leaving aside the rights,
colonial guilt.
Yeah, quite colonial, white settler guilt, exactly.
That's
it. So leaving aside the rights and wrongs of the Hamas-Israel war, which we don't want to go into here, but we all know who's responsible, for any UK elected representative to use such really this inflammatory rhetoric to describe what is effectively the only functioning democracy in the Middle East is utterly appalling. It's disgraceful language at the best of times, certainly at a time like this. It is just unforgivable. It's sadly typical of Maggie Chapman, who's quite simply the most...
She had that whole thing, didn't she, have recently with the tweet, right?
Yep.
What was that one about? Just the same thing, right?
Pretty much the same thing, exactly right. Yeah, I mean, she does this regularly. She's a dreadful.
They're so convinced of their own righteousness.
Exactly right.
It's really, and it's appalling to see. They think they're really good people, and what they do end up doing is cheering on terrorists.
Quite.
I mean, that's enabling the worst people in our society to do things, perverts, to get into changing rooms. That's what they're trying to do. I mean, what kind of people are they?
Indeed. Let's not exaggerate this. It's not an exaggeration, I should say. They are talking about sexual deviance, and they are talking about the terrorists who act with utter barbaric depravity, and those are the people they are speaking out on whose behalf they are speaking out. Now, they will say that it's all to protect civilians in Gaza. Really? So that's why you want to subject those civilians to yet more despotic rule from Hamas. Great. It's nothing of the sort. They're just making points about supposed bigotry against trans people and about Israel, which a place they clearly detest. And that's
it also gives them a chance to just shout at you when you oppose it, and they say that guy there's a racist. Are you racist?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Okay, well,
it's dreadful. It's the worst of politics. Just dreadful.
Absolutely terrible stuff. It's so needy. It's horrible. Right. I mean, a worthy candidate there. And okay, but there is always a better candidate, I think.
And I think I might just have him.
Yes.
Right. And yes. So, Mary, you're going to be up next with our next candidate. Will that person win this time?
Yes. My Zoomer of the week is Ross Greer, isn't it always, who made an appalling anti-Semitic speech in Holyrood yesterday, supported by his social media posts. Once again, like his colleagues, he flaunted his hate for Israel and the Jews and his support for Hamas supporting Gazans. His subject was, genocide cannot be pinkwashed. And he said, Israel is slaughtering queer Gazans with just as much relish as every other Palestinian they kill. No pinkwashing genocide. Now, pinkwashing is a critical term for attempting to benefit from fake support for LGBTQ plus rights, often as a way to profit or to distract from a separate agenda. So, Mark, do you want to show some of the video?
Oh, yeah, so show the video. Yep.
One common response I've had recently from Israel's defenders is to bring up the horrible treatment of LGBTQ people by Hamas, as if that obliges me to support the Israeli occupation instead. Often those responses have gone beyond Hamas into offensive generalisations about the attitude of all Palestinians towards queer people, a position which erases queer Palestinians themselves. Please know, despite what the media says, there are gay Palestinians. We are here, we are queer, free Palestine. Presiding officer, there is no liberation for LGBTQ Palestinians when Israeli soldiers are literally raising the rainbow flag over the rubble that they are buried beneath. Genocide cannot be pinkwashed.
Well, this is some kind of black is white kind of war.
Exactly.
War is peace, freedom is slavery type thing, isn't it?
Well, here I've got a few facts from. I looked up Wikipedia to see what people all over the world have been saying about the LGBTQ community in Gaza. They say homosexual Palestinians flee to Israel because of the hostility they face in Palestine. Around 2,000 Palestinian homosexuals live in Tel Aviv at any one time.
Wow.
The Palestinian Authority police kept files on gay Palestinians. In 2016, one of the leading commanders of Hamas, Mohammed Ishtiwi, was executed for engaging in homosexual activity. And a scholar called Timia Spitka stated that in Gaza, coming out is a death sentence. Wow. So this is the Gaza that Ross Greer supports. And as a gay man, he knows full well that he would be murdered just for being gay in Gaza. And he knows that Israel is as open and accepting as any other Western democracy. So Ross Greer is the one who is pinkwashing for Gaza.
It's unbelievable. They put the the Israeli soldiers put the rainbow flag up over Gaza, and he's complaining about it. Right? Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. Absolutely nuts. Yeah. Really? Okay. Well, I don't know who's
David.
David.
Oh, am I choosing tonight? Oh, right. Oh, gosh. Right. Hang on then. Who will I go for? Right. Okay.
So who have we got? We've got Gillian McKay in the Greens.
Yes.
Maggie Chapman in the Greens. Ross Greer in the Greens.
Yeah, indeed. Right. Well, I'm going to say, I think the one who's been the most blatant hypocrite is McKay. Because you can't say, I don't want an oil refinery on my doorstep, and then say, how can you shut this refinery? How can you do this? You absolute disgrace, you. So let's give it to the Greens in general, but and then to McKay specifically for her.
Oh yes, there are 3 wins in a row.
There you go.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, we need to. Oh, I can't.
3 wins in a row.
We cannot have that.
That's it. That'd be a great choice there, David. But I actually think Ross Greer should take it because that war is freedom and slavery war is strength nonsense.
I think they were all strong. I think they're all strong.
Just absolute nutters.
Exactly. But I don't care at all. I wasn't aware Ross Greer had announced any sexuality. I'm not sure. Is he? I don't know. I've never really
I was wondering about that as well, Mary. I don't know if
he is really? Sorry, I thought it was openly gay.
I'm not aware that he is. So just to say...
Oh, well, if he's not openly gay, then I apologise.
Yeah. So it's probably...
I assumed he was.
As well for the show to say, we don't know and we don't care, but
it's not relevant. But...
Yeah, I mean, I don't... Well, it's a bit strange if he's not gay and he's talking about gays in Palestine. It's like, were you elected for that? No.
Yeah, quite, exactly.
Not even any part of that. So it's a bit strange. Okay, right, we'll wrap up the show there. Thank you for being with us in a slightly extended show. Lots to talk about every week. No, I hope the Greens don't watch this show, but anyway. Thank you for being with us. I'll leave you with the thought of the week, this time from Oliver Cromwell speaking to Michael Matheson and Hamza Yousaf. It's high time for me to put an end to you sitting in this place. I don't know if he spoke with a Scottish accent.
I'm sure he did, yeah.
But anyway, this is Scottish Oliver Cromwell. Which you have dishonoured by your contempt of all virtue and defiled by your practice of every vice. Ye are a factious crew and enemies to all good government. Is there a single virtue now remaining amongst you? Is there one vice you do not possess? So take away that shining bauble there, which is the iPad, and lock up the doors. In the name of God, go.
Brilliant.
Well, Mark, you remind me of Laurence Olivier.
Darling. Yes.
You must be Elizabeth Taylor then, Mary. Okay, right. So we are so happy to have you all of you on the show every week. In Scotland's #1 politics chat, we're here for a better Scotland, and we are so happy you are here for that as well too. We'll see you next Wednesday, November 29th. Please introduce a friend to the show if you can. A huge thanks to David for coming on tonight.
Great to see you.
It's been great, and a huge thanks to Mary for doing all the chat messages.
Thanks everyone. Today. Thank you for all your comments. I was really overwhelmed tonight with comments.
Well, that's great. So thank you very much, and we'll see you again next week. All right, take care.
Guys. Bye everyone.